Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Wanted to talk a little bit about today Freemasonry and Christianity and their symbiotic relationship. So there's a Bible verse, Isaiah 45:7. Paraphrasing, it states, "I create the light, I form the darkness, I make evil, I bring the peace, I do all of these things. I am the Lord." Now, with your standard Christian theology, it would be hard to incorporate that because we have this assumption God has created only the good things, everything not good is not from God. But if God's the creator of all things and there's only one God, then who created what we see now as evil? We've talked about this before. You can go back, look at, the Garden of Eden and evil. We've talked about this at length. So I think that God is the creator of all, and the good and evil language we use is to better comprehend things that are harmful and innocuous and helpful. Because I think something, anyway. So he's created this spectrum, if you will, of reality, and humanity has a gift, which I think is Christ, the consciousness. I think consciousness is Christ. So we have this spectrum at which we can perceive the world. And I think because of that perception, Freemasonry and Christianity have a beautiful dance they do. And that dance, I think, is ultimately for the good. So, as some of you may know or may not know, the Catholic Church, this is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, you can call it a conspiracy theory. I guess the reason I'm saying that is it isn't a point of view which you will only hear from crazy, far out there anarchist, conspiracy theorist. This is a point of view you hear very often in the Catholic Church, and that is it has been infiltrated by the Freemasons. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Freemasons were stonemasons originally that helped build the cathedral. So in some sort of way, they were one with the Catholic Church, became the Freemasons, I think, from the Knight Templar. And now it is known as this fraternity, a lodge, which incorporates all religions and attribute, call their God the great architect. But we are somewhat aware of the rumors, at least. I don't know how true they are, but we are aware of the rumors that state they are in the head of governments, which is true. That part is true. You have like 13 presidents being Freemasons. But the part that becomes really speculative is if they are part of these human trafficking events, organizations rather, and, the porn, sacrifices, like human sacrifices, all this crazy far out there talk, that's speculative. I tend to think that stuff is true, but that's simply my opinion. And I'd be hard pressed to try and prove it. This is just, what I believe based on the evidence that I've seen. And so they have this aura of evil about them to people in the truther community, if you will. And quite often, they will lead people to Christianity. I know they helped lead me to Christianity. despite that, we cannot attribute anything good to them. Even though I could have an evangelicist or whatever the hell, I can't talk right now. We can have one of them, a Baptist, whatever, come knock on our door before then and try and convince me that I need to be saved, or I need Jesus in my life, and I would probably say, yeah, okay, whatever, and not really listen to them. But it's because of Freemasonry, and I'm sure a lot of people, my hunger for the truth and for the good was ignited. So I went over to Christianity. And what I'm getting at here is you have this infiltration in Freemasonry. You have this Catholic Church, the centerpiece, if you will, of Christianity, at least in the Western's mind. And this infiltration has done nothing but bad to the church. It's dismantling the church. It's destroying Christianity as we know it. So we think. And because of that, now the pedophilia that happens in the Catholic Church is being exposed. The abuse of power in the Catholic Church is being exposed. The financial schemes or whatever are being exposed. All of the dark deeds, the evil deeds, if you will, of the Catholic Church are being exposed because of this infiltration. So it's said, and what I mean by that is I don't mean like the belief isn't that the Freemasons have helped expose all of these things, but rather the Freemasons have inserted a type of mind virus into the church, leading people into demonic possession by their emotions, their feelings. And when I say demonic possession, I just mean a thought that is not helpful to you. And what I mean by helpful to you, I mean like your overall well-being. If it's something that's going to be detrimental, whether it be mentally, physically, spiritually, it's not good. So you can be possessed by these things. Like you can be possessed by anger, for instance. You can be possessed by love. You can be possessed by anxiety. So when I say demonic possession, I'm not talking exorcist girl whipping her head around 360 like she's a freaking owl. That's not what I'm talking about. So we tend to think that of the Freemasons when we say they infiltrated the Catholic Church. I tend to think it's a combination of the two. It may be some other side that I haven't thought about, but definitely a combination of the Catholic Church was already doing this before, Freemasonry came into play and helped bring all of these things to the light, while at the same time manipulating the environment to suit their needs. But because of that, we now are seeing this rise of mysticism in the Catholic Church. So they're bringing back the Franciscan order, I believe, and a lot of monks who were mystics are starting to gain notoriety in this day and age, such as Mr. Eckhart and Thomas Merton, who were both very open in their view of God. One would say it isn't as dogmatic as we think the church to be. Despite that, they were never condemned of heresy. They were always in line with the church teachings. Despite some of the things you would never hear a pastor or father say, they said, such as Minster Eckhart saying that the eye that I see is the same eye that God sees through. God and I share the same knowledge, or whatever. So I'm paraphrasing. Look it up on your own. Maybe I'll put it up in the video. you hear things like that from this mystic. And so Freemasonry, because of the couple things it did, whether it infected, manipulated, mind control, if you will, the church in a way, but also helped bring some of these things to light, which then ignited this mysticism and Catholicism to rise up in today's world, because we're needing something a little more deeper than the surface level spirituality which we know Christianity for, and that's it. That's also another reason why not everybody, but most people are looking to the East, or looking to New Age religions, or looking for a self-help motivator, something along those lines people are seeking for, because they want something deeper than what has been understood about Christianity. And Freemasonry has helped ignite this shift of consciousness, something deeper, this petal beginning to come away from the bud. Like it's about to blossom. It's starting to blossom. It's starting to do that. It helped it begin to blossom. So we see right there, I think, the harmonious relationship they share with one another. It's exposing, manipulating, but then because of that, it's turning the wheels so something can be produced outside of it. It's bang. Now you have this level of mysticism. But now we have this issue of everybody going, not everybody, I got to stop using that hyperbole, but a lot of spiritual seekers are going to the East, to the Far East, for their spirituality. And that too is a beautiful thing, because the quest for mysticism has led people to the Far East. Now, after most people wake up to see that the Far East, not saying they're all wrong, I have the Tao Te Ching upstairs, I read it, I think it's a wonderful book, or Proverbs, or whatever, it's beautiful. There's a lot of things in there I agree with. I have Confucius text upstairs. I have researched a lot of Hinduism. I, listen to Osho. I listen to Sadhguru, Muji. I listen to these people. There's a lot of things that they say that I agree with. There's a lot of things they say that I like. However, one of the negative things with the Far East traditions is this tendency to completely eliminate your individual self, so you become a part of this nothingness, which they call God. You just give up everything about you, and you are now just this empty vessel. No identity, no anything. And it's kind of hard to really describe. In a sense, that's a good thing. To a degree, that's a honorable task to take on, because there's a lot of false perceptions that we have of ourselves. There's a lot of blind spots we have because we're not seeing something that we have structured or constructed out of lies and misconceptions. It's good to break those things down. However, you need to have your identity. The ego is not a bad thing. And so I'm saying all of this because you have the Freemasons with the Catholic Church leading people to mysticism, which then is leading people to the Far East religions, which you dig far enough into and you see that it will potentially lead to this mental illness because you give up yourself completely. You no longer have this identity. And it's kind of hard to kind of explain. So that will wake people up, which then brings people into the Near East church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is the Christian church. The Catholic and Orthodox Church used to be one until 1054 due to political and theological reasons. We won't get into that whole thing here. But up until then, they basically developed every fundamental Christian doctrine you know today, that you probably believe today, had come from 7, I think, councils led by the Catholic Church, which encompassed both the East and the West for years, all the way up until almost 3,000 years. I'm not sorry. Almost 1,000 years. I said 300 because I was like 325 for the Council of Nicaea, I think, which was the first council. And then from there. So it's like almost 1,000 years that this church was one. So it's only been this short amount of time that we've experienced their separation. So all of this, I think, is going to lead to the reunion of the East and West. Now, I cannot leave out the other secret societies that may be playing a role in all of this, such as the Jesuits. We know for sure they wouldn't be considered a secret society, but they are not the most... They're associated in the same way with Freemasonry in Skull and Bones to a degree, because they have the Black Pope. They're more secretive. They were first organized to be the strong arm for the Pope, but now they're leading education and all this. We have a couple of Jesuit high schools near where I live, or just schools. Not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying that, yeah, I see the Jesuit stuff all over. They're really known for their education. So, we have a bunch of other secret societies that we could also point the finger at and say they help get this thing moving. But I use the Freemasons because we know for sure they have infiltrated the church, which has brought us to where we are. And I think that is a mysterious thing. I want to say God does, but I don't know. It's a mysterious thing how our reality is structured so that we use good and evil ultimately for good. Like I guess maybe the better way to phrase it is that we live in an imperfect world, so we're going to have a mixture of perfect, or good rather, and not good. That's just how it is, and everything in between. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this whole Freemason Catholicism thing. Ultimately, I think it's going to lead to the reunion of the Eastern and Western churches, and together they will be very strong and influential in rebuilding Western civilization. I don't mean that it's going to collapse in a huge shit show like Mad Max. I don't think that. What I mean by collapse is this cultural collapse is what we're going to experience. Right now we're in war, in this cultural warfare. It's true. You're being enlisted to fight for either the Democrats or the Republicans. Eventually that will trickle out into grow rather into actual warfare in larger areas where diversity is accepted, welcomed. Not saying it shouldn't be. That's not the right way I should say it. Where diversity is more prominent. I'll put it that way. Where diversity is more prominent, you will see a increase in violence, for sure. But for the most part, it's going to be this cultural warfare. And in the process, I think we're going to have to re-examine the way we think of Christianity and what we think of Christ, Jesus, our Savior. We have to reconsider that. I think a lot of Protestant churches, or I hope, I can't say I hope. That's too, forgive me. I think probably all of them are going to fail. And the reason I almost said I hope is because I think it would ultimately be a good thing, so that way it will force us into this re-examination of Christianity, because we would need to rebuild. But, with Catholicism in the East coming together, it's going to give us this blueprint on rebuilding civilization, on rebuilding culture, because we live in this society where it's all about deconstruction. And deconstruction isn't a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You should know how something is constructed and how you can take it apart. You should know how to take it apart and put it back together. I think God gives us the tools to understand that. Unfortunately, people get caught up on one or the other. Usually caught up on the deconstruction part in a hatred of God, trying to disprove God, showing that they can be God. But anyway, that leads to that whole satanic, Luciferian mindset, philosophy of liberalism, I think. But anyway, yeah, so that's what I had to say about that. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you do, awesome. Hit the thumbs up, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to. All right.